Turn-ins are a pretty simple part of the book, but they have a big impact. On a factory-made book, you can see where the book cloth has come in here. There's a little bit of a depression, and then the foldovers on the corners. Not a particularly amazing job, despite the fact of this being a higher-end book. When we hand make the books, or they're done out of leather, then it gets a little bit more involved. You want your corners to have a little bit more care done on them. So today we're going to do a quick tutorial on how to do turn-ins. If you're used to doing a lot of bookbinding, a lot of this will be repetition. If you're new to doing bookbinding, it's worth having a look and making sure that you're doing this right. There are different ways to do it, but I'll show you one right way to do it. I've got a little model here to do that, but also I figured it'd be nice to show you on an actual book. So this is a copy that I'm making of Bookbinding in the Care of Books. What might be additionally interesting about this is it's made out of scraps. I printed the text block in the middle from the file that's available on my Patreon page. I've got a bunch of books on there if you're interested. Links in the description. And this one, I took pieces of leather that aren't big enough to do a book in their own right. So this is the biggest piece of leather on this book. And it's not really big enough even to do a book that's this size. A book half this size. It's not big enough quite to do that. But it's big enough to fit halfway around this one. A couple of green pieces that are a little smaller, and then the labels cut out, and some carpet tacks from the library there that we're kicking around. So this is made out of scraps, but it's meant to look kind of like a dwarvish, Lord of the Rings dwarvish workshop book that they might have. So I thought it'd be fun just to show you the techniques on this book as well as on the model, so I can explain it really well and then show you how it works. So let's get started. What are turn-ins? Turn-ins, that extra bit of material that folds over and glues into your book and creates those nice little edges. Few things to note. I like to use thick leather, and in the comments it's come about a few times where people are doing things a little bit differently, and a large part of that is thinner leather or thinning out the leather, skiving the leather on the corners and on the spine. So I've marked here where that would normally be done. Sometimes it's done all the way along the edges to turn in. This book's cut off at the bottom, but normally it would have a flap there as well. So these are the key places where you want to thin it out. Now, when I use thicker leather, the problem areas that I have are right here and right here. The reason being, once that leather's folded over and the book's folded up, you see that's got all that extra bit in there. That can be a problem, especially if the leather hasn't been skived. So that is a downside of using thicker leather, easily solved by skiving around the spine, which sometimes I do. To be honest, sometimes I don't, depending on how thick the book is. If it's a really thick book, there's room for that extra little bit in there. And I don't mind it for my personal books at all. If I'm doing a commission, that's a bit different, but for my personal books, that's fine. I like the look, so it's all good. Here though, I'm going to show you how the books come together. The main part to keep an eye on is the spine. When you have your book together, normally the text block would be glued on here and attached to this bit here. Behind the endband, there's a gap. And that gap should go down all the way to your kettle stitch before you have your hollow and the glue and all that in there. But there should always be a gap here, and that's to fold this down into. So it needs to go as far down as this flap is this way without hitting the kettle stitch. So you need about that much space for this one. Maybe this might be a little more than needed, but once that goes in here, maybe not. The other thing you want to make sure is you don't have too much up here or too little. If this is really short and it folds over, then it's going to end right here, and that's going to very easily pull out, and you'll wind up having a funny flap. Your book will look like it's falling apart. If there's too much of it, it'll hit where the kettle is and it won't fold properly here, and you'll get kind of a bulgy fold up at the top and extra wrinkles and all that kind of thing. So make sure, especially if you've just glued your book, that there's room here. So I'll show you on this one, because this one has the text block in it, and this one has a gap down to here. Now, is that far enough? On this side, it might not be. So what I can do is just kind of give it a little bit of help there and make sure that there's room for that. Now, I'll off camera probably trim that little piece off if I need to. Yeah, I'll need to do it off camera because it's too small for my big fingers to get in there. But you get a nice gap down there. You check this side as well. Make sure that the leather hasn't glued itself to anything during the process of putting the boards on. We'll flip it upside down and do the same thing here. Find that gap. Make sure that there's room. Now this one again, gonna make a little extra room. I wanna make sure that can fold all the way down and have lots of room. Now this one, a bit of leather stuck to the edge there. So we'll just kind of break the glue, there we go. Now you don't have to worry about ripping your whole book up, because you'll hit your stitches and you'll hit your tapes before that happens. But you want to make sure that you have room to slide that leather in there. Mine's good now, it's got room on both sides. So we'll put that here for now and we'll get back to our model. Before you glue it, my recommendation is always dry fit it first. So I'll do it with the model first. I'm gonna fit that little spatula blade. You can use like a bread knife, butter knife. You won't want anything too sharp, but something like this, for example, works. You can fit a little space in there and then feed that in to the gap, tuck it in. I sometimes use one of these as well to tuck it in there and move it around. Once you get it, the lip of it in there though, if you grab on either side and pull down, you'll often get a nice fit. It'll slide right into position like that. And then you fold it. And again, your text block would be in here holding all that there. But you get that nice little shape at the end. And then while the glue is still wet, you can massage that back and forth and shape it. You don't want to crush it. You don't want to leave it all bulgy and uncared for. You want to move it around until you get a nice balanced, preferably thin and sharp line here. Rounded if you have a rounded spine, but this is a nice flat spine one. Go like that. And then glue these down. Now ideally, when these flaps go over, you'll want this to be nice and straight and uniform, right angle, straight and uniform down here, down at the bottom as well, so that you can fill it in afterwards. And I'll show you that near the end of the video. But this doesn't always work that way. Once the leather gets wet, it can stretch, it can skew a little bit. Depending what the needs are here, it might come out a bit wonky. So don't worry about it. Get it nice and solid and flat, and you can always take the razor and do a nice trim afterwards. I do that almost all the time. I find it just makes a nice clean edge. So we have that. We would then go and do the corners this way again. Now these were just quickly cut to show you they weren't measured very well, but so that one's a bit shy. I will do it on the real book now and show you how that works. So we're going to be folding that over and tucking that in. I like to always start at the bottom or at the back. So on this one, I'm going to do the bottom. We'll get the glue out and a little brush. Now again, this hasn't been skived, So it'll have a little more there than is ideal and you'll probably like, but you'll see the kind of chunky feel to it, and especially for this book that's meant to look like dwarves with their sausage fingers mated in some cave in Moria. That's what we're going for. So I'm going to glue this right down to the end, not around the corner, but right to the corner. Get the glue right to the ends. You don't want a lot of glue, but you want to be able to see it. It shouldn't be big globs of white, like that's a bit too much there. I'll move that over here. You don't want it squirting out everywhere. And here, I'm always careful to make sure that it goes right to the end, especially through there. And again, you don't want too much, because if it gets pressed in between pages and channeled somewhere, you never know what you're going to be gluing together that you might not want glued together. It can glue your hollow together. It can glue pages together that you don't want glued. So just enough to moisten that leather without causing any real problems. Now this bit is always the worst bit, but I find if I pull this back a little bit, bend it back a little further than makes me comfortable, that's usually about the right amount, and I tuck in that corner first. By the way, you can cover this in tin foil or whatever to protect it if you're worried about getting glue on things. I normally don't have a problem with that, so it's not really an issue for me. Now, I don't want to crush the top of my cardboard spine, so I want to be careful when I'm doing this to get into that gap while keeping the cardboard that runs down the back inside here firm and intact and not banged up on the ends at all. There we go, and I'm going to pull that around the edge. Now, once I have the little tips in there, like I said before, grab either end here, kind of massage it a little bit. See if you can get it moving in there. This one's causing me some trouble, so it's hung up on something. There it goes. That corner went. This corner should be close. Okay. Getting there, getting there. Now you notice I'm not worrying about these edges too much at this point. They've got glue on them, but even with the PVA I'm using, I have time. If you want even more time, then you can use a paste, a wheat starch paste, or mix it with PVA a little bit. Yeah, now this is what I want. I want to see some shape and sculpting start to happen there, and then I go out to the edges and start working them along to the corner. Keeping in mind, this bit tends to lift up, so you want to make sure that's nice and low, that you have enough there. You can always trim it back if need be. So I'll get this down. Can't do a lot of camera shots here because there's a bit of a time limit on the glue, but hopefully you'll get some good angles. Now here, I don't want all that extra on the back if I can. And I like to avoid too much wrinkling along the top here. So we can see here what's going on the corners, and now is the time to relax a little bit. We have it on there. The glue is setting, but it's setting more or less in place. We can get this stuff sculpted. Now always take a look from different angles. Make sure things are lining up how you want them to line up. And that's your bottom turnovers done. Now, once those are turned over like that, they're nice and tucked in, your book can stand up like this without having all this flapping around underneath, moving it around. This is why I like to do the bottom part first, because the top's much more stable and I've got more of a chance to take more care and make it as beautiful as possible. I want the underside beautiful too, but it's not as important as the front, the top, the places that we see and handle the most. So we avoid errors, but if we're gonna make an error, let's make an error where people aren't gonna see it or see the repairs we have to do. All right, so quick review as we do the second long edge. This is the long edge, and then we have the short edge there. I might do some more of kind of fantasy prop style books. I know some people frown on those and want to be kind of more serious archival bookbinding. I like to do some of that as well, but it's fun to do things like there's a Lord of the Rings spell book that one of you put up in the community pages, which is very cool. I think I might have to try my hand at something similar or something elvish. I think that would be fun. Okay. Now again, the way that I start this is I make sure I've got some nice gap in there, and then I fold this over. I don't pinch it, but I just get like a nice arc, usually on this corner, and tuck it in behind the end band, and I hold it. And then I can nudge the other half through. Oh, see, this one went so much better than the other one. That makes me so happy. Get to see one that's not being a pain. So just give that a little shove in, and we're already ready to get these sides folded down. Now, I like how fast PVA is because this is already setting into place. I don't have to clamp it. Now you'll notice this kind of swoop-de-loo here. Part of that is because I'm using multiple pieces of leather. Part of it is the moisture of the leather. And part of it is because I know that I normally cut it anyway, I'm not particularly fussed with laying this down along a perfect line. You can actually draw a line and form things back and forth to fit there. The thing I worry about is if I'm pushing it backward to make it fit the line, this part here can come away from the edge of the board and you get kind of this happening. And I would rather trim it and make sure I get a nice, sharp, straight line on the inside. So everything's in place, but I want to make sure that I have this bit all how I like it. So I tuck in. Don't know if you can hear the kind of squishy, it sounds almost like chewing Rice Krispie Squares sound when that's tucked in. That's little bubbles of glue squeezing in where they need to be. And again, the point is not to crush it, just get it all tucked in and happy. Some creases in the corners where it's going to fold. And then make sure this is all nice and solid. So we haven't done the ends yet, obviously, but already we're getting a nice feel to that book. I wish you could feel the heft of this one with the metal on it and the nice thick layers there. It's quite a nice feel. Very dwarfish, I think. So now I'm going to do a quick dry fit of the edges. See how they're doing now. I can tell already, because this was moist and has spread this way, if I fold that over like that, there's going to be quite a bit of overlap, probably more than I want. And here we might have a bit of a kissy end, if you remember that video. So I think there's a bit too much leather there for what I want. Now this is the tricky bit because I don't want to trim it there. I want to trim off some of this meaty leather underneath. And this is where, if you skive it first, if you trim down the leather and thin it out. You don't have to mess with what I'm messing with right now. Probably will be fine without it. Now I'm going to cut off as little as I can, even if I think I need more, because you can always trim more, but you can't put it back. I've tried, doesn't work. Now you see this side fits up well, but this corner's stretched a bit. So I'm going to trim it off a bit safer now because that's going to be under the paper anyway. And I can still nudge these around. I can trim that if I want. There are different things that I can do. Now this one, you can see where a bit of the leather got left on there. So I'm going to take care of that. Put that over. I think we're there. So notice I'm not rushing. I'm not wasting any time. I'm not dawdling. But slow is smooth. And smooth keeps you from gluing something you don't want to glue. So, and if you control the amount of glue you're using, if the nerves of being filmed don't overwhelm you and you're not trying to watch TV while you bookbind or anything else distracting, your dogs aren't jumping up on you or anything like that, then you'll have just the right amount of glue to fold this over and not make a mess. I'm going to start at the end here, get that into a nice clean spot and go about 1/4 of the way over, just enough that this will hold this in place. And then I'm going to go right to the other end, do the same thing. This one's a bit problematic compared to the other one. I might be doing some little trimming and fixing there because I got too much on this one, more than I wanted. And then as I head this over, you see these wrinkles here. If you spread that out over the length, especially with this really flexible leather, you don't want wrinkles and ripples, but if you spread it out over the length, they just disappear. So this corner is going to need some extra love. I'm gonna probably do a little bit of trimming on this corner and maybe tuck it underneath this corner. But I'm not going to do that at the moment because sometimes it surprises you and tucks in there happily without all that. Glue and leather, who'd have thought they play so well together? Okay, so that side now, looking pretty good. If you struggle with your corners, there's a video on that is the result of me stressing over corners for ages and finally figuring out a method that works for me. By the way, guys, there have been some comments on different ways to do things. There are always going to be different ways to do things. It's good for you to learn them all. I have my favorites. I have my ways that I teach beginners, and then I have things that I do in certain situations where in other situations I do something different. Don't think there's only one way to do it. And remember that innovation never happened by doing exactly what everybody before you did. If you're doing book restoration and you're trying to put it back exactly the way it was, or to practice those traditional bookbinding arts just the way that they did, I mean, that's what this book's all about, then do that. I do it, it's fun, but I like to have, keep myself open to trying other things and to figuring things out. I've figured out a couple of methods for book building and book repair that I haven't found anywhere else. Maybe someone else does them, I don't know. But they work really well. Okay, we had a bit of a camera issue there, but the book has been folded over, as you saw. There is a lip here of the leather. I will fill that in with a bit of gray board. You can also use layers of watercolor paper or other paper. I will also trim this bit here so it's nice and straight. That helps this get in more easily without having to cut it into a weird shape. And it also just keeps things very clean and organized, even where others can't see it, because we can see it there. We have our little tops here. Now again, a bit too much material in there. I'm going to try and tidy that up off camera. On the bottom here, it's fed in nicer, so that's what I'll be aiming to fix that little issue there before I close it up. And we have a nice, neat copy. We will be moving on from here into Binding the Invisible Man. I'm really excited about this book. I have some design ideas in mind. If you'd like to join me and join others in making this book together, you can do your own design. You can follow my design. I have the digital file on my Patreon page. The link is in the description. If you'd like to, have a look there, or you find it somewhere else online and join in. It would be very cool to have a whole bunch of people doing it at the same time and to see some pictures in the community page. Those of you who are commenting and engaging and putting photos of your things online, thank you so much. I love to see that. And I hope you're enjoying bookbinding. We'll see you in the next video, or at least you'll see me.